Ted Bundy, the most brutal serial killer in American history. In the 1970s, America was gripped by fear. A shadow loomed over cities, universities, and parks. He carried no obvious weapon, showed no suspicious signs. Yet, he left behind a terrifying trail, the bodies of young women who had been raped, tortured, and murdered. But the most horrifying thing was not just what he did, but how he did it. A handsome, charismatic, intelligent man, who would suspect that behind this perfect facade lurked a monster in disguise? Today, we dive into the chilling story of Ted Bundy, one of the most notorious serial killers of all time. From his first murders to his final moments, everything will be revealed now. Ted Bundy's early life. Ted Bundy was born in 1946 in Vermont. He grew up in a middle-class family and was considered an intelligent, charming young man. But behind that flawless exterior lay a dark soul. From 1974 to 1978, Bundy committed at least 30 murders, though the real number of victims is believed to be much higher. Bundy used his good looks and manipulative skills to approach his victims. He pretended to be injured, in need of help, or even posed as a police officer to gain their trust. When they sympathized and got close, he overpowered them with sheer force, often by knocking them unconscious or strangling them. His signature modus operandi. He often used his brown Volkswagen Beetle as a mobile crime scene. Inside, police later discovered several suspicious items, including ropes, ski masks, and other tools. Bundy didn't operate in just one area, he moved across the United States, from Washington to Utah, Colorado, and finally Florida. Each place he visited was left with a haunting trail of horror. Despite being arrested multiple times, Bundy managed to escape and continue his crimes. It was only when he was sentenced to death in 1989 that the terrifying saga of this serial killer finally ended. First murder, Linda and Healy, 1974. On the night of February 1, 1974, a young woman named Linda and Healy was sleeping soundly in her apartment at the University of Washington. Bundy broke into Linda's apartment by forcing open a window. He quietly approached her bed as she slept. Without a sound, he delivered a fatal blow to her head, rendering her unconscious instantly. After knocking Linda out, Bundy took her clothes and carried her body outside, loading it into his Volkswagen Beetle. No one saw him leave. Everything happened in eerie silence, like a never-ending nightmare. He drove to a remote forest, where he carried out his most heinous acts, torturing and killing Linda. Her body was never found, forever buried in mystery. As the sun rose, life at the University of Washington went on as usual. No one knew that a young woman had vanished overnight, becoming Ted Bundy's first known victim. Meanwhile, Bundy calmly returned to his daily life, as if nothing had ever happened. For him, this was just the beginning of a horrific killing spree. The murders of Janice Ott and Denise Naslund, 1974. On July 14, 1974, Lake Sammamish Park in Washington was crowded with people enjoying their weekend. Bundy appeared in the park, looking dashing but appearing slightly weak. He pretended to have an injured arm and asked for help carrying his boat to the lake. His charm and manipulation made people trust him without a second thought. He approached Janice Ott, a beautiful young woman relaxing on the grass. With his elegant appearance and persuasive story, Bundy easily convinced her to follow him. This was the last time Janice was seen alive. After dealing with Janice, Bundy returned to the park and continued hunting for his next victim. This time, he targeted Denise Naslund, another young woman standing near the lake. Using the same trick, he lured her away from the crowd. Both Janice and Denise were taken to a secluded forest nearby. There, Bundy raped, tortured, and killed them. Their remains were discovered weeks later, showing signs of severe beatings and strangulation. When Janice and Denise failed to return home, their families and friends panicked and reported them missing. It took weeks before their bodies were found, leaving the nation heartbroken. Meanwhile, Bundy calmly resumed his normal life. To him, these murders were merely part of his brutal plan. What's terrifying is that America's most dangerous serial killer could operate in broad daylight without raising suspicion. The Melissa Smith Case, 1975. In October 1975, the town of Midvale, Utah, was still a peaceful place where people trusted in the safety of their community. But everything changed when Melissa Smith, the daughter of the city's mayor, vanished without a trace. Melissa Smith, 17, was an energetic and well-loved girl. On the evening of October 18, she left home to visit friends. It was the last time her family would see her alive. Bundy had chosen Melissa as his next target. He stood near her home, pretending to need help or simply observing from a distance. With his manipulative abilities, he easily approached her and lured her into his trap. After abducting Melissa, Bundy quickly took her to his Volkswagen Beetle. No one saw him leave. Everything happened in silence, like a never-ending nightmare. He drove to a secluded forest, where he committed his most heinous acts: rape, torture, and murder. Her body was found 9 days later, showing signs of severe beating and strangulation. When Melissa's body was discovered, the entire town of Midvale was consumed by grief. Her family, especially her father, the city's mayor, could not believe that such a tragedy had happened in their hometown. As for Bundy, he calmly resumed his daily life as if nothing had happened. To him, this was just one part of a horrific killing spree that he had meticulously planned. Other victims of Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy did not stop after his initial murders. He continued hunting and killing numerous victims, leaving a trail of horror in the history of American crime. Karen Campbell, 23, disappeared on January 12, 1975, while walking down the hallway of the Wildwood Inn Hotel in Colorado. Her body was found weeks later, bearing signs of rape and torture. Debbie Kent, 17, vanished after leaving a theater performance at Viewmont High School in Utah. Her remains were found months later, showing clear evidence of torture and murder. On the night of January 14, 1978, Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. He beat Margaret Bowman to death and raped and strangled Lisa Levy. 2 other victims in the house were also attacked but managed to survive. That same night, Bundy also attacked Cheryl Thomas, a ballet dancer living nearby. He beat her so severely that she was left completely paralyzed and suffered permanent memory loss. Though Cheryl survived, her life was forever destroyed. Bundy left a trail of horror across the United States, from Washington to Utah, Colorado, and finally Florida. The confirmed number of his victims exceeds 30, but the actual count could be much higher. Finally, in 1978, Bundy was captured after a series of brutal murders. However, his story remains a chilling reminder of the danger posed by serial killers. Ted Bundy's modus operandi. To truly understand the threat of Ted Bundy, we must examine his methods. Bundy was not just a serial killer but a master manipulator who exploited his victims' trust. Bundy often used his good looks and acting skills to lure his victims. He would pretend to be injured, ask for help carrying something, or even pose as a police officer to gain their trust. Once the victim let their guard down, he would strike with force. After abducting his victims, Bundy would take them to a secluded location, where he would rape, torture, and ultimately kill them. His brown Volkswagen Beetle became a terrifying symbol of his crimes. He frequently chose remote forests as the sites for his atrocities. There, he would brutalize and murder his victims before abandoning their bodies in the wilderness or burying them underground. Bundy was not only a ruthless murderer but also highly intelligent and confident. He used his charm and manipulation skills to evade suspicion for years until his final capture in 1978. Bundy's methods serve as a grim reminder that danger can come from those we least expect. Always stay vigilant and never trust someone solely based on their outward appearance. The capture of Ted Bundy. After years of horrifying crimes, Ted Bundy's fate was finally sealed. But capturing him was no easy task. In 1975, Bundy was first arrested when a police officer noticed him driving with a stolen license plate. Inside his car, officers found ski masks, ropes, and other suspicious tools. However, at that time, they lacked enough evidence to convict him of the murders. Bundy was detained for kidnapping and possession of criminal tools. However, he escaped twice, first from the Aspen County Jail in Colorado and later from a law library in Florida. His audacity shocked the entire nation. His final arrest came in 1978, after he committed 2 brutal murders in Florida. This time, police had overwhelming evidence against him. Bundy had no more chances to escape. During his trial, Bundy remained confident and cold. He even chose to represent himself in court, trying to manipulate public opinion and the justice system. But all his efforts were in vain. The end of Ted Bundy. On January 24, 1989, after years of terrorizing the nation, Ted Bundy, the most brutal serial killer in American history, was executed by electric chair at Florida State Prison. This was an inevitable end for the devil in disguise. Outside the prison, hundreds gathered to celebrate Bundy's death. For them, it was a moment of justice. But for the families of his victims, the pain he left behind would never fade. Bundy's victims were not just names in crime records. They were young women with dreams and aspirations, whose lives were stolen in the most horrific way. Their families still live with an irreplaceable loss. In his final moments, Bundy remained composed and unrepentant. To him, death was merely the final step in the twisted game he had played. Ted Bundy is gone, but his story remains a chilling reminder of the dangers posed by serial killers. Always be vigilant and never judge someone solely by their appearance. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling stories.